I didn't decide to do it. That's the first thing worth saying. There was no moment where I sat down and thought, I'm going to hand the next 20 minutes of my life to a screen. No, no conscious choice, no deliberate transaction. My hand just moved the way it always moves. The familiar reach, the automatic unlock, the thumb already in motion before the observer self had any say in the matter. And just like that, I was gone. Not dramatically, no. Not into pain or conflict or the rehearsal of something difficult, no. Just gone, quietly, completely. I was into a stream of images and words and other people's moments that arrived and disappeared and arrived again, scrolling. In an endless current that went nowhere and came from nowhere and demanded nothing except my continued presence inside it, which I gave freely without noticing I was giving it. Yeah, this dream has a different quality to the others, you see. No emotional charge, no narrative urgency, no ego self defending its territory or rehearsing its lines, just a low hum of stimulation that asked nothing of me and returned nothing to me, and somehow consumed 20 minutes or 30 or more, without leaving any trace of where I'd been. The ego self, my ego self, has a story about this too, of course. It says, I was resting. I needed a break. I was just checking, the news, the messages, what everyone is doing, and what the world looks like today. Whether anything has changed since the last time I checked 11 minutes ago. Yeah, and the story is almost believable because rest is real. Because the body and mind genuinely need recovery. Because there's nothing inherently wrong with a few minutes of easy consumption. Except this wasn't rest. Rest restores something. Sleep restores. Silence restores. A walk restores. A real conversation restores. Even genuine laughter restores. What the scroll produces is something else entirely. A kind of anesthesia. You go into zombie mode. My ego self numbs rather than nourished. The observer self, it's not resting, but it's absent. Consciousness is not recovering its energy, but quietly leaking it into a current that's designed, and I mean deliberately, architecturally designed, to keep it flowing without destination, just out. I wasn't resting. I was being emptied slowly while something told me I was being filled up. And here's what I've noticed about the specific quality of what gets consumed. Other people's lives arriving as images, carefully selected moments, the best light, the best angle, the best version of a life curated for the gaze of strangers. And the ego self, without announcing its intentions, to me anyway, begins to measure. Not dramatically, not with obvious pain, just the quiet background hum of comparison, their life against mine, their progress against mine, their apparent ease at living and succeeding against my actual complexity. My ego self doesn't announce this. It doesn't say to me, I am now going to make you feel insufficient. It just does it, subtly, continuously, the way water finds its way through stone. not forcefully, just persistently. And my observer self, the one that could simply watch this happening without being consumed by it, is nowhere to be found. Because the scroll specifically requires its absence. That's not an accident. The return from this particular dream is quieter than the others, you see. No sudden interruption, no flash of recognition, just a gradual surfacing. Like coming up slowly from water that was never very deep, but somehow held me under anyway. I put the phone down, or I'm still holding it, I don't know. And something in me notices a quality in the air around the moment. A faint flatness. Not guilt exactly. Not emptiness either exactly. Something that doesn't have a clean name but is immediately recognizable once you've felt it enough times, you know? Almost like you need to take a shower. The specific aftertaste of having been somewhere that gave absolutely nothing back but lingers. Of having spent something without receiving anything in return. My observer self steps quietly forward, these moments. Oh, I was gone. How long was I gone? And then, gently, without ceremony, thank you. The same forgiveness that's always available. The present moment holding no grievances, no record of the time I gave away, no punishment waiting for me. Just here. Still here. Always still here. But this time, I want to stay with the waking for a moment longer. Because this particular drift has something to show me if I'm willing to look at it honestly. The hand reached without being asked to. That's worth sitting with. Not with shame, not with the ego's self-elaborate self-criticism that would just be another form of unconsciousness, right? But with genuine curiosity. My observer self simply asking, what was I moving away from when the hand reached? Because the scroll is rarely about the scroll. It's about the moment just before my hand moved. The slight discomfort of stillness sometimes, the faint anxiety of an unstructured minute. My ego self's deep unease with the absence of input, with the silence that the observer self knows as home, but my ego self experiences as a threat. Because the ego cannot survive in silence. The reach wasn't for the phone. It was away from the quiet. And the quiet, that specific quality of open, unoccupied presence, that's exactly where the observer lives. That's the territory the ego self is most practiced at vacating. Which means every time I notice the hand reaching and pause, I just pause, even for 3 seconds, even without putting the phone down. I'm doing something more significant than breaking a habit. I'm choosing the quiet over the current. I'm letting the observer self stay home. So today, when my hand will reach, I know it will. It always does. It will reach in the gap between tasks, and in the silence after a conversation, and in the queue, and in the 30 seconds before sleep arrives, and probably in several moments I won't even notice until afterward. When I catch it though, and I'm catching it more often now, I want to try something simple. Just pause before the unlock. 1 breath, maybe 2. Not a judgment, not a rule, not the ego self, now policing the ego self with a new set of regulations about screen time, back into unconsciousness. Just a moment where my observer self is consulted before the transaction happens. Pick it up and ask, is this rest? Or is this the reach away from something? Now, I'm sure the answer will be honest. It always is when my observer self is the one asking. And if it's rest, genuine rest, then rest. And if it's the reach, just notice. Just feel what the quiet actually contains before deciding it needs to be filled. Most of the time, what it contains is simply this: the present moment, open, unhurried, giving everything back. No unlock required. If something in this episode found you somewhere you recognize, you're already awake enough to know it. And that recognition, that quiet sense of, yes, I know that place, is your observer self identifying itself, confirming that it was here the entire time, watching, waiting, ready to step forward the moment you gave it your attention. And that's not nothing. That's everything. If you want to go further, if the territory we've been exploring feels like somewhere worth spending more time, the frequency arc is where this work lives. It's a gathering place, built for those ready to raise their frequency and remember their connection to something larger than the ego self's daily drama. It's not a system, it's not a doctrine. It's just a space where authentic frequency does the work that argument and explanation cannot. You'll find it at the frequency arc, and I'll leave the details in the notes for this episode. And just so you know, there are more episodes in this series, each one a different drift, each one the same 3 movements, each one an ordinary moment revealing something extraordinary about the consciousness experiencing it. Come back for the next one, or find another episode that calls to you, or another podcast that calls to you. The present moment will be there when you arrive. It always is.